Due Process, recipient of 2 Mid-Atlantic Emmy Awards for Outstanding Talk Show Series and Outstanding Public Affairs Series.
From the bottom of our hearts, we are so truly grateful that we stand here today with our son.
2 men and their baby, an adoption that's made history here, to applause by some, condemnation by others. New legal ways of looking at family, next on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding is provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual, publishers of print and electronic information for and about the legal community, including the Legislative Manual.
Hailed by some as a major breakthrough, damned by others as a dangerous threat, New Jersey's new precedent-setting agreement on gay adoption has made national headlines and national waves. I'm Raymond Brown, and on the docket for this edition of Due Process, the new ways in which the law is defining families. Here in New Jersey, it means unmarried couples, gay and straight, will for the first time be on equal footing with their married counterparts, at least when it comes to state-sponsored adoptions. What's gained, what's lost, and what's next? Expect some spirited debate in the next half hour, but first here's Sandra King with the real-life new family behind the newest social controversy.
Well, Raymond, you will recall a few years ago that the massive New York City school system became obsessed for a while with a simple but explosive text about a little girl named Heather who had 2 mommies. Well, the precedent-setting legal change here in New Jersey began with a toddler named Adam, who now officially has 2 daddies. The applause as they carried their baby out of court was just the start for Michael Velluccio and John Holden.
We are here today for the first time as a family, and we're so thrilled and so ecstatic that we received joint adoption today of our son Adam.
That was last October when a Superior Court judge said yes to this family. But last month, when the state agreed to make their exception the rule, it was hailed as the biggest gain for gay rights since Ellen came out, sitcom style.
I'm gay.
And it brought almost as much national publicity.
The state of New Jersey has agreed to repeal its policy that prohibited lesbian and gay couples from jointly adopting.
But the landmark decision has predictably brought a backlash, too. For every claim of victory from the left,
it's a wonderful and historic consent order.
There have been cries of foul from the right. Each side says its concern is for families, but the family that started it all says it all comes down to one kid's future and one kid's needs.
What's your name? Adam? What's your name?
Amber.
Oh, that's right.
He was low birth weight, prematurity.
Addicted to just about every drug you could name. The first time we saw him, he was literally shaking. He was a 3-month-old baby with bugged out eyes, in a swing, just shaking, sitting there.
Now, just 2 years later, it's hard to imagine that Adam was ever sick.
Where's the dog? Point to the dog.
Very good.
The medically fragile children, it's the children that at one time, 20, 30 years ago, was hard to place. And it's such a pleasure to see folks come in, take care of children, give them all the love that Michael and John have done.
Kiss goodnight.
Adam today is healthy and smart, and he has 2 daddies.
Give me a kiss.
Give Daddy a kiss.
Give me a kiss. Mwah.
Okay.
Thank you. Get in bed.
Ready?
In fact, beginning when Adam was 3 months old, it was DYFS that named these men first foster parents, then pre-adoptive parents. It was only when the adoption was at hand that the bad news came.
She said, I know that you thought you were both going to be able to adopt him together, but apparently we have this policy and you're not going to both be able to adopt him. We're going to issue the consent in Michael's name, so only Michael will be able to adopt him. And it was one of the worst phone calls of my entire life.
And it went something like this.
The policy regarding unmarried persons in the state is that one person can adopt and then the second person can go back and do a so-called second parent adoption.
But it's that very policy that the states agreed to abandon in the wake of their win in Bergen County.
I'd like to think that a combination of realizing that they were going to lose in court and that this was not in the best interests of children is what led to this historic agreement today.
And now, with precedent in hand, the ACLU has no intention of stopping with New Jersey.
We already are litigating the adoption issue in several states when it comes to individuals, and you can expect to see us in the next few months raising this issue in the courts in other states, because New Jersey is a beginning. We now need to move through the rest of the country on this issue.
Being gay was not an issue for us, but we had prepared. We did it with the support of our families, of our extended families, of our neighbors, of our neighborhood, of our town, of our church, our parishioners. I mean, it was everyone. It was a community effort, us having this baby.
Use 2 hands, spritz your face.
He's gonna spritz me, I know it.
Well, spritz someone. There you go. Okay, now brush. Oh, good job.
Well, the new rules, it seems, don't apply to private placements, only to adoptions handled by the state. Still, that's most New Jersey adoptions, about 700 last year. And DYFS reports it has some 200 families now under evaluation. 15 of those are unmarried singles. But Raymond, gay activists are predicting that there will be a huge rush of gay prospective parents who thought before that they would have no possibility to adopt, who will now be knocking at the door. It'll be interesting to see how it goes for them.
You're right, Sandy, but it's not just about gay adoption, but about a whole new way of defining family. One that's raised cheers from the left and alarm on the right. We'll hear the arguments from the Christian Coalition on the one side and a family law professor and the ACLU on the other. So stay with us.
I don't think that anybody should object to it in this day and age, that there are gay couples that are caring and loving parents and have raised good children.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. How are these kids going to grow up and be anything when they got this bad example that their parents are giving them?
It's 2 guys, I think the kid needs a mom.
Yes, the children needs a loving home, and if gay people can give them that loving home, then so be it.
They don't bother me, I don't bother them. So their child shouldn't be treated any differently than anybody else's child.
A friend of mine is gay. She lives with her lover, or the other woman has kids. I don't really see that they're having any kind of a problem. So,
the 2 young men that were just awarded custody here in New Jersey are beautiful people. They took that baby into their home knowing that he was possibly sick, gave him all that love. Now they've got a little girl that they're possibly adopting. I think it's the coolest thing. Wherever you can find love, go for it.
That's one way of looking at it, but not the only way. A sign of social progress or social pathology. For some predictably different answers, we turn to Bruce Skews, Vice Chair of the Christian Coalition of New Jersey, and family law professor James Bosky, and in Newark, Lenora Lapidus of the ACLU of New Jersey. Professor, let me turn to you and ask whether this opinion really, or rather the settlement, really means what it seems to me. I mean, do you really believe that gay couples, perhaps not in the spotlight, perhaps not in almost the ideal situation economically as this couple was, up against other couples, maybe in a contested circumstance, are going to be treated exactly the same without regard to their sexual orientation?
I think they're not going to be treated necessarily exactly the same. The issue, first, it's important to realize that this is not a radical opinion. We have had at least 2 other cases in New Jersey where gay adoptions have been approved in expressly published opinions, one in 1993 and one in 1995. The only thing that's different about this one is that it involved a DYFS placement.
Let me interrupt you for just a second and ask Mr. Skewes if you agree that it's not a radical opinion, which is what the professor says.
Well, I think this is a radical show. I think the way that you have defined the issues is radical. I think to say that after centuries and millennium of time that we're going to say that something is a family which is not a family.
Well, how would you want to redefine the issue?
I'm not redefining. You folks, the press and other individuals are redefining the word family. The word family means those who are related by blood marriage or traditional adoption, not some kind of sorry and sad and pale facsimile of adoption.
Let me turn to Ms. Lapidus. You're there in Newark, but you're a person who was involved with this case, and it's been some time since the decision. What's been the reaction? Have there been polls or public reaction either way to this settlement?
Well, we have gotten tons and tons of letters. There have been letters to the editors. Our clients have gotten letters, and the overwhelming response has been positive. What we hear time and time again is that child was so lucky to now be legally allowed to be adopted by these 2 loving parents who have offered to take what was a very sick child into their home, provide the love and attention that that child needed in order to develop into a healthy and happy 2-year-old. And what we've heard from people all over the state and all over the country, in fact, is that there should be more adoptions like this allowed so that the states can truly serve the best interests of children.
Why shouldn't there be more adoptions like this allowed?
I'd like to take the time to make a personal note about this. You see, I'm an adopted person, and I just thank God, and I thank the people of New Jersey that they had the wisdom and the sanity to give me a real mother and a real father. Well, and I think that, excuse me, but I think that every child deserves a woman who is a mother and a man who is a father and deserves the fullness of the relationship that nature and nature's God intended.
Ms. Lapidus, what's your response to that in terms of this case? Is this a child who was otherwise likely to be adopted in the near future?
No, and there are many other children like this. There are thousands of children in New Jersey in need of adoptive homes. And the idea that they should instead languish in foster care and not be able to be adopted is just absurd. These children need loving homes, and there are many lesbian and gay couples in the state who are available to provide those loving homes, and the state should encourage that.
Go ahead, Mr. Skewes.
Well, Ray, I'll try not to be absurd, but I would say that according to the research that I've done, there's 5 million qualified married couples in America wishing to adopt children. I think each of us knows perhaps people who have gone outside of the country even to adopt children, but to suggest that the pool of potential adoptive parents is somehow lacking is to be dishonest. I'd like to discuss the case of Wayne Tardif and his lover, Alan Yotis, who, according to my research, adopted a child in New Jersey back in 1992. And so typical, this couple adopted a 3-year-old boy in New Jersey. Tardif died 2 years later at age 44, and Yoder died a few months later, both of them of AIDS, and the child had to be placed back into the system. Now, that's from the Washington Blade.
Let me ask you this
homosexual organization's publication.
Based on something Ms. Lapidus said, which is, if there are children currently in foster care or even in state care, are they better off there than being adopted by homosexual couples?
That's I'm not going to be placed in a position where I have to say that something that is bad is better than something that is worse. I just don't think that those are the choices that in reality face us.
Let me bring the professor in for a moment. Okay. I sort of cut you off a little bit in terms of your statement that, in a sense, this settlement is an extension of where we've been going for a while in New Jersey. But if that's true, how is this going to work as long as there isn't gay marriage permitted? Doesn't it put gay prospective adoptive parents at a disadvantage to be up against or be compared with perhaps heterosexual married parents?
In many cases, it will put them at a disadvantage. One of the things that was true in this case, and I gather at least, and has been true in other cases, we're talking about people who have a long-standing, committed relationship. We all know that marriages which may arguably once have been for life, although that's questionable, certainly are not for life anymore. So the fact that a family may break up, the fact that parents may die is a reality that children face in many situations. The fact that the child is given a stable, a permanent home, and the opportunity to grow up is very important. Mr. Skew's idea that there's a mass of people out there waiting to adopt these children simply is not true. The people who are going out of country are looking for infant adoptions, healthy infant adoptions. This child would not have received a placement in New Jersey in the condition that he was in when he was first there. It would have been would have been very difficult to find a suitable adoptive family prepared to take him at that point.
Let me bring you back to the gay marriage question, because I think you do raise some interesting questions about what does marriage really mean. But certainly courts have taken marriage as an indicator of stability for the future. Do you think it is inevitable and perhaps only just that the courts or the legislature in New Jersey make gay marriage a part of the life here, so that this settlement, which says gay parents should be treated like others, will be a real one?
To my mind, gay marriage is almost a false issue. The question of I look at families in terms of the relationship between the parties, not the formal relationship that's granted by a judge or a minister pronouncing a relationship, but the reality of how those families interact. I think that gay marriage probably would be good for those people who feel a need to have that additional statement of commitment. But I think that the form of commitment is less important than the reality of the commitment, the reality of the love, and the reality of the caring. I think what we're seeing here is exactly that.
The issue of gay marriage is exactly at the center of this, and what this is an unprincipled end run by gay activists to try to get around the marriage issue.
Why do you say unprincipled?
Well, because they don't care what happens to these children. What they care about is to have their agenda. Now, let me finish, please, because it's 2 against 1 as it is.
Go ahead and finish.
Okay, what they're trying to do is an end run, and they have this agenda for gay marriage, and they don't care if a child has to give up ever having a mother, in the case of having so-called 2 fathers, or in a lesbian case of ever having a real father. They don't care what the child sacrifices. They just want to get around and have have their way. And let me tell you something.
Let me ask Ms. Lapidus.
You raised an interesting point.
We'll come back to Mr. Skewes. We'll come back to you. Let me ask Ms. Lapidus whether it's true that this case was one that was arranged for purposes of principle, or whether this was a real couple that was interested in adopting a child, because Mr. Skewes raises an interesting point.
Of course this was a real couple. This was a real child in need. The child had been placed in this couple's home as a foster child. The parents from the beginning said that they wanted to adopt this child in order to provide a permanent, stable home for the child. There was nothing at stake here other than the best interests of that child.
I didn't say it wasn't a real couple. I didn't say that it wasn't a real boy. What I said was that it provided an opportunity for gay activists to do an end run around marriage.
That's absolutely not the case.
I'd like to say that...
Mr. Skewes, what do you think that a marriage is? Do you think that a marriage is merely the words that are pronounced over somebody? A marriage is a relationship between 2 individuals. It's what allows them to work together, to live together, and to function together, and to raise children together. The mere formality of the pronouncement is nothing.
Well, let him finish, and then you can finish.
But I don't get a chance. We have 2 people. He filibusters.
You should stop counting heads and answer the question. We're interested in what you have to say.
Well, if I ever get a chance to talk on this program,
this is the Hurley-Burley of debate, Mr. Skewes. Go ahead and respond.
No, I was told that this was not the Jerry Springer show.
Do you want to respond?
Yes, I would love to respond. I'd like to say that one of the problems is the disease and early death in the homosexual community. The fact is that Bill Bennett said, writing in the Weekly Standard, that the best research shows that the typical age of death for male homosexuals is 43 in this society. That also was repeated in the National Review. I don't think it should hurt anybody's feelings to encourage the crusade against AIDS, which is effectively accomplished by avoiding certain activities. Homosexuals should not be parents. A child needs a mother and a father, and it's just that simple. And the liberal mind wants to redefine everything. It wants to redefine family in terms of, well, you know, I love my dog is my family. And what is next after homosexual marriage? I mean, if we can say that it's okay for homosexuals to marry, and the traditional, from the beginning of time, definition of marriage between a man and wife cannot stand.
What about heterosexuals who are not married? What about heterosexuals?
What about plural marriage?
Let me ask you a question. How do you feel about heterosexuals who are not married?
I think that if a man and woman want to adopt a child, they ought to have a sufficient commitment to one another to be married.
Would you take the child away from them when they divorce then?
Would I take? No, that's a family
because now they no longer
that's a broken family. It's a tragedy, and the child should stay with its natural
parents.
So you
feel a broken family is better than a real family that stays together and that raises a child together?
Well, what's a real family? That's the crux of the definition. You want to change the word family.
Is this really a fight about then what constitutes a family? Is that really at the heart of this discussion?
I think in many ways that is exactly what the issue is about.
Well, you know, if you want to get all feely and say that a family is a lodge, or a family is a Bible study group, or a family is some group that I'm close to. I mean, I have friends who I'm closer to than certain members of my family, but in reality, that's not family. A married man and woman creates a family, and then when they have children, the family is expanded. This is the definition in the Bible, which is a history book as well as a theological book. This is the definition that from time immemorial, and we think with our approaching 21st century wisdom that now we know better. We think that people who are subjected to a host of terrible diseases and early death should be given children. I don't think that's correct.
Ms. Lapidus, do you think that heterosexual couples will be treated the same as other couples, even given this settlement? Or do you think that in a case which is not a cause célèbre, which is not being followed by the press, where there are just ordinary human issues, that perhaps there will be a natural bias in favor of heterosexual couples?
Well, what the state has agreed to now and is written explicitly in the consent judgment is that there may not be that bias, that lesbian and gay couples must be treated the same as heterosexual.
But do you believe it, as a practicing lawyer who's dealt with realities in courts, do you believe that given the words and intention of that settlement, that it will be effectuated, or do you think that some of those biases and feelings or thoughts that have evolved over years will continue to affect how decisions are made, even despite the settlement?
Well, we certainly believe and hope that the consent decree will be followed, and if it is not followed, all lesbian and gay couples in the state of New Jersey have the right from that consent judgment to go into court and ask the court to enforce the judgment.
Well,
so that
let me ask you this question. Do you think it's likely that this time next year we'll be back here in due process talking about the successor case you've had to bring in order to enforce the rights determined by the settlement, or do you think it's going to go far more smoothly with less resistance?
No, I'm confident that the state will abide by its agreement here, and I think that what's important is there are families out there, there are couples out there, and it's important that the law now recognize those and give these children the legal rights. What this consent judgment makes possible is that every child now who is in a lesbian and gay-headed household will have the legal protection, so that if anything should happen to one or the other of those parents, that child will be protected by the law in the state of New Jersey. This child has the right now to never have a real father and never have a real mother. You know,
he has two real fathers,
my mentor,
doesn't he have two real
in the case of a lesbian marriage, he has no father. In the case of a homosexual man marrying another homosexual man, he has no real mother. I want to quote something that my mentor, Bob Knight of the Family Research Council, said about marriage.
Do you predict that there'll be let me ask you, do you predict that there'll be a backlash, a reaction from folks who feel as you do about this case, and in fact, isn't this provide an opportunity to galvanize?
I'd be glad to answer that. If I may just make this one statement. This is what Bob Knight said about gay marriage. Gay marriage is an ideological invention designed to appropriate the moral capital of marriage and family toward the goal of government-enforced acceptance of homosexuality.
Well, we're interested in what Bob Knight has to say, but we're more interested in whether you think this is going to generate a counter-response. Bob Knight is not an expert on the subject.
As he is an expert on the subject, and as such, it is a counterfeit and a fraud. Now, you ask me if the decent, right-thinking, God-fearing people of America, and I can see your eyebrows go up.
I don't remember asking you that question, but why don't you give us a response about whether you think there's going to be a response, because we're running out of time, and I want to know what you have to say.
You asked me, and I feel that the decent, right-thinking people in America and in New Jersey will rise up, and I can guarantee you that the Christian Coalition is not going to sit idly by, we are going to try to get legislation passed to protect these children from being placed in homes where the fathers die early, in homes where there is no real mother, where there is no father. We are cheating these children. We are
Professor, as
redefining
we
the
wind
family,
down,
and
let me
it's
ask you the same
scandalous.
question that my other two guests have addressed. What do you think is the future in terms of popular response and possibly legislative change either way on this subject?
I think is that as people see the families, and as we saw from the last speaker on the tape, as people see these families, see the children being raised, growing up healthily, and there's lots of studies indicating that these children grow up healthily and well, that the people will accept them. There is no biblical authority for definition of a family. Mr. Skews has a good imagination, but very little authority.
I was not talking about theology.
Do you agree that this ultimately revolves around definitions of the family?
What this involves is looking at the best interests of children. Certainly there are new families in society today, and it's important that the courts and the legislatures recognize those.
Thank you, and it's been important that we hear from you, but in the midst of this very heated discussion, I need to end it. And thank you for being with us in Newark, Ms. Lapidus, you, Professor Boesky, and you, Mr. Skews. Thank you for being with us. That's it for this edition of Due Process, but you'll want to join us next week when we turn from news of legally looking at family to new ways of dealing with drugs. The new drug courts next time on Due Process. Till then, for all of us here, I'm Raymond Brown.
It's the worst thing I can imagine to have kids out there in group homes, no matter how good. You know, everyone needs a family. It further took us to what kind of kids, and really, we didn't say too much. We said if they need a home, put them here. It's like it's the right thing to do. We have everybody has love to give, and that's all the kids need. You know, no matter how healthy, sick, poor, rich, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is the 90s. It doesn't matter what your family looks like as long as you have a family, and it's a strong thing. You know, we have a family of the 90s.
Major funding for Due Process was made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding was provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual, publishers of print and electronic information for and about the legal community, including the legislative manual.